A woman in a hazmat suit suddenly discovers a creepy old woman and cautiously approaches to ask her questions, but she doesn't know that the elderly woman has already been infected with the virus and mutated. As she watches the other woman's fierce face approach, the woman in the hazmat suit tries to draw her pistol from her waist, but she is violently pinned against the wall by another zombie that appears behind her. The woman struggles free, quickly picks up the dropped pistol, and with a single shot, she takes down the zombie that lunges at her again. However, the crisis is far from over, as another zombie nearby roars and attacks her. This is the plot of the latest 2023 zombie movie, New Life. The story begins with a young couple camping in the wilderness. They are playing poker, but a stray dog comes to join in the fun. The woman can't help but get close to the dog, not realizing this is the beginning of their nightmare. Just after returning home, Jessica finds her lower leg covered in red spots. At first Jessica thought it was flea bites on her dog, but she didn't realize that her boyfriend Ian had the same red spots on his body and the situation seemed to be much worse than hers. During the night, Ian not only has a severe cough, but his abdomen also shows signs of ulceration. At this moment, Jessica finally realizes something is terribly wrong, so she quickly calls for emergency help. However, strangely, the ambulance does not go to the hospital but stops at a pitch-black warehouse. Just as Jessica realizes something is amiss, two people in hazmat suits suddenly rush into the vehicle, cover her head with a hood, and forcibly take her out of the vehicle. They lock Jessica in a room. Jessica doesn't know what's happening and can only shout loudly, but in the silent warehouse, only her echo can be heard. Soon after, a staff member finally arrives, but he doesn't speak. He just places the food on the ground and turns to leave. Jessica quickly rushes to ask why she is being imprisoned, but she still receives no response. Although she doesn't know what these people want, Jessica refuses to sit idly by. Seeing the light bulb overhead, she immediately plans her escape. Before the next meal delivery, Jessica preemptively knocks out the room's light bulb. The man, finding it pitch dark inside, doesn't think twice before opening the steel door to check, unaware that Jessica has already circled behind him. It seems escaping won't be easy. Jessica is forcefully pinned down by the man, but in the struggle, she manages to pull off his protective mask. With his protection gone, the man becomes extremely nervous and swings a hard punch at Jessica. Jessica quickly picks up the broken light bulb from the ground and runs. The man immediately gives chase, trying to stop her, but he is met by Jessica turning and jabbing the light bulb straight into his throat. Killing someone for the first time, Jessica is very panicked, but she doesn't forget her boyfriend in her escape. However, when she finally reaches the room where Ian is held, she witnesses a horrifying scene. Ian is completely ulcerated and no longer looks human. With the last bit of consciousness, Ian struggles to get up from the bed, approaches the window, and calls out to Jessica for help. Not understanding the situation, Jessica thinks they have turned her boyfriend into this creature, so she tries to rescue him, but she finds the door firmly locked, and no matter what, she can't open it. As the alarm suddenly goes off in the room, Jessica, for her own safety, is forced to give up on her boyfriend. However, shortly after she leaves, Ian in the room mutates. After escaping successfully, Jessica immediately returned home, fearing that they might come after her. She first washed the blood off her face and then grabbed some travel money, preparing to run away. But just as she was about to act, she heard noises coming from the next room. Just as she suspected, those people had already followed her home. With no time to pack, Jessica quietly opened the window and hurriedly fled. In order to get away from the town as soon as possible, Jessica quietly hid in a pickup truck. The driver did not notice any abnormalities and drove straight into the morning. Seeing the driver head towards a nearby restroom, Jessica seized the opportunity to get out of the truck and then went to the cab to find some food and a map. Before the driver returned, Jessica headed toward the woods up ahead. Deep in the forest, Jessica ate while studying the map, knowing she had killed someone and that they wouldn't let it go. She planned to flee north to Canada to hide. To avoid revealing her whereabouts, Jessica could only continue on foot along the forest. Finally, before dark, Jessica reached a farm, but she only dared to sneak into the barn, hiding there overnight without alarming the farm owner. Unknown to her, her route had been captured clearly on surveillance, and the ones tracking Jessica were a group of government agents. Because Jessica carried a terrifying virus, yet hadn't mutated after so long, it seemed she also possessed antibodies against the virus. Although Jessica herself wouldn't be affected, anyone who came into contact with her would be infected. making her like a walking bioweapon to prevent the infection from spreading further. Raymond, who was in charge of this capture mission, reached out to Elsa, an agent on leave, planning to have her apprehend Jessica, but Raymond didn't reveal the full horror of the virus. He merely lied that the target was a carrier of the Ebola virus. Elsa hesitated upon hearing this but eventually agreed to take on the task. Her hesitation was due to a recent diagnosis of ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which sometimes caused her to fall uncontrollably, but to avoid letting her superior notice her condition, the determined Elsa still insisted on taking the mission. On the other hand, Jessica, who had just woken up in the barn, went to the farmhouse to quietly steal some food to continue her journey, only to be caught by the arriving farm owner, Frank. Fortunately, Frank didn't trouble her, seeing the girl before him looking somewhat pitiful. The kind-hearted Frank and his wife even prepared a hearty breakfast for Jessica. Little did they know, this decision would doom them. After breakfast, Jessica went to the restroom, but frugal Frank took Jessica's unfinished food and stuffed it into his mouth, successfully infecting himself with the zombie virus. Realizing she shouldn't stay here long, Jessica planned to leave immediately. Learning she intended to head north, Frank even tuned up his pickup truck, planning to personally drive Jessica part of the way. Soon, they set off, and the truck drove until night, reaching the designated location where Jessica immediately got out to leave. Frank had prepared luggage and food for Jessica for the road. Such good people are rare these days. Jessica didn't know how to thank Frank, but at that moment, Frank began to show symptoms of coughing. Seeing this, Jessica didn't notice anything unusual. She reluctantly said goodbye to Frank and then set out on the run again. As Jessica got closer to the border, the weather turned colder, but fortunately, with Frank's prepared items, she could survive in the extreme conditions. Meanwhile, Elsa finally found the farm based on the clues, and to prevent infection, she opened the trunk and put on a hazmat suit. But when Elsa pushed open the door, she found the house empty, the kitchen in disarray, and the sink stained with plenty of blood. Suddenly, an elderly man bending over appeared in her line of sight, and Jessica quickly ran after him. Because her ALS was getting worse, Elsa could only walk with the help of a cane, and she could easily fall if she wasn't careful. Following the trail, Elsa came to a warehouse and found the elderly woman, who was actually Janie, Frank's wife. But Janie looked off. Her hair had all fallen out, and her entire face was ulcerated. Clearly, Janie had been infected with the virus and had completely turned into a zombie. Seeing the horrifying appearance of the other, Elsa immediately became vigilant. Elsa was about to pull out her pistol from her waist but was grabbed from behind by the mutated Frank, causing her pistol to drop to the ground. In a desperate situation, Elsa forcefully pushed Frank away, then quickly picked up the fallen pistol and pulled the trigger. Elsa had just caught her breath when the old woman, with bared teeth, lunged at her again, but was quickly shot dead by Elsa, having escaped death. Elsa realized things were not so simple, so she immediately called Raymond to find out what was going on. At this point, Raymond had no choice but to reveal the truth. The root of the problem was a pharmaceutical company collaborating with the military. Their research on a biochemical virus had accidentally leaked, and although the military acted quickly, a dog carrying the virus escaped from the lab. The dog was then encountered by Jessica and Ian in the wilderness, which led to the current situation. Elsa had seen firsthand how terrifying the virus was. It could cause the infected to lose their minds and become highly aggressive zombies. However, Jessica hadn't mutated in several days, so they concluded she might possess antibodies. Thus, Elsa's task was to capture Jessica as quickly as possible and then use her to develop an antiviral serum. Knowing the truth, Elsa was very angry, but to prevent the virus from spreading, she decided to continue her mission. Meanwhile, Jessica had arrived at a bar on the border. Since the food Frank gave her had run out, she had no choice but to try to find some odd jobs at the bar. Molly, the bar owner, didn't really need help, but seeing Jessica's condition, she kindly took her in to help with various chores. During their breaks, they chatted in the storeroom. Seeing the ring on Jessica's hand, Molly thought she had run away from home after an argument with her boyfriend, so Molly unconsciously started talking about her own past. It turned out that Molly had a failed relationship, which was why she opened a bar alone in the small town on the border. They drank and chatted together. However, Molly could never have imagined that she would die from using the same drinking glass as Jessica. After closing time, Molly even let Jessica stay at her house. But the next morning, Jessica found that Molly hadn't gotten up yet. Jessica knocked on the door upstairs but got no response. Thinking Molly was still sleeping off the previous night's drinking, she went out alone to buy some things from the store. Unexpectedly, Elsa, who had tracked her to the town, saw her. Just as Elsa was preparing to act, Jessica seemed to notice the anomaly behind her and decisively turned and walked away. By the time Elsa hobbled over, Jessica had already disappeared. When Jessica returned home, she knew it was no longer safe, so she prepared to say goodbye to Molly. She forcefully opened the bedroom door only to see a familiar scene. Molly's symptoms were the same as those of the boyfriend. She was now ulcerated all over her body, lying on the bed, but Jessica still didn't realize it was her fault. Frightened, she packed her things, ready to flee. Then she heard footsteps coming from upstairs. Terrified, Jessica went up to check, only to have the zombified Molly lunge at her as she pushed open the door. Jessica, scared, quickly fled downstairs. Before Molly could attack, she used a book to block the assault. Jessica kept hitting Molly until she stopped moving. Still in shock, she tried to wipe the blood off her face but was horrified to find her hair starting to fall out as well. At this moment, Jessica finally realized what was happening. All of this was related to her. Soon, Elsa, following the intelligence, tracked Jessica to Molly's house but saw the dead Molly through the window. Based on the situation at the scene, Elsa deduced that Jessica was nearby. So, to prevent Jessica from escaping again, Elsa immediately put on her hazmat suit and pursued her toward the border. Sure enough, Elsa finally found Jessica standing in a nearby warehouse. Elsa warned Jessica not to make any rash moves, claiming she was here to help her, and she explained everything about the virus to her. However, at this moment, Jessica was not only bald but her face also showed signs of ulceration. It seemed that Jessica did not have any so-called antibodies. It was just that her mutation took longer to manifest. Seeing this, Elsa tried to soothe Jessica's emotions, urging her to go back for treatment, as this would at least give her a fighting chance. But having seen the fate of her boyfriend and Molly, Jessica knew she was beyond saving. Facing the threat, Jessica was unmoved. She slowly approached Elsa, confident that Elsa would not dare to shoot. Unexpectedly, Elsa was not just talking. Jessica didn't want to die here. Her strong will to survive forced her to desperately run towards the border, but Elsa could not let her leave. Despite her physical limitations, her aim was still precise. Elsa took off her cumbersome hazmat suit and shot Jessica accurately in the thigh. Catching up, Elsa again warned Jessica to stop running and to come back with her, or the next shot would be fatal. But Jessica did not want to return to the place where her boyfriend died, nor did she want to become a lab rat for the military. In the last moments of her life, she just wanted to take a good look at the world. At this point, Elsa had no choice but to shoot. The crisis finally ended with Jessica's fall.